Who was Mark Twain? By April Jones Prince, illustrated by John O'Brien. Who was Mark Twain? When I was younger I could remember anything, whether it had happened or not. Mark Twain. If you can't quite place the name Mark Twain, think of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. They're Mark Twain's most famous books. Mark Twain was America's greatest storyteller. He was so good at making up stories that he even made up his name. He was born Samuel Langhorne Clemens. His best stories came from his own boyhood adventures in the Mississippi River town of Hannibal, Missouri. Mark Twain had an exciting life. He was a steamboat pilot, a gold miner, a newspaper reporter. He traveled all around the world giving lectures which were really more like one-man shows about his writing and experiences. Mark Twain became the most famous and successful author of his day. Many of his stories are funny, but often the humor touches serious issues, including racism, greed, and injustice. America changed a great deal during Mark Twain's life. He challenged Americans to look at who they were and where they were going. Chapter 1. In with the Comet. There comes a time in every rightly constructed boy's life when he has a raging desire to go somewhere and dig for treasure. Mark Twain. Samuel Langhorne Clemens, the man who became famous as Mark Twain, was born in a two-room house in Florida, Missouri. The date was November 30, 1835. Halley's Comet. A comet is a ball of dust, gases, snow, and ice that travels around the solar system. We can see comets every once in a while. When they travel close to the sun's heat gives the comet a tail of gas and dust, forming a bright streak in the sky. Halley's Comet is the most famous of these cosmic snowballs. It was named for the British astronomer Edmund Halley in 1758. Halley realized that comet sightings in 1531, 1607, and 1682 were actually all sightings of the same comet. Halley's Comet returns about every 76 years. It will be back in 2061. Halley's Comet, which appears only once every 76 years, streaked across the sky that night. Was the brilliant light a sign? Sam's mother, Jane, hoped so. Her little Sammy had arrived 2 months early. He was so small and frail that she feared he wouldn't live. In those days, many children including 3 of Sam's 6 brothers and sisters did not live past childhood. But Sam Clemens survived, and he gave his mother a good deal of trouble in the process. In 1839, Sam's family moved to the larger town of Hannibal, Missouri. Sam's father, John Clemens, was a lawyer and shopkeeper. John hoped to leave hard times behind. While John struggled to support the family in Hannibal, Sam struggled to pay attention in school. He attended Mrs. Hoare's log schoolhouse on Main Street. Sam was a terrific speller and loved to read, but he was restless and excitable. He often broke the rules or played hooky. Hannibal was a river town between 2 bluffs that overlooked the mighty Mississippi River. Sam called it a boy's paradise. He and his friends would sneak away to an island in the river to fish, swim, and smoke corncob pipes. Other days, they played in the woods. They pretended to be pirates, Indians, and Robin Hood and his merry men. There were also caves downriver where the boys went looking for treasure. It was exciting and scary to explore dark, underground passages. Sam once got lost in the caves, and he almost drowned in the river 9 times. "You gave me more uneasiness than any child I had," his mother told him. Sam later said he thought she enjoyed it. The Mississippi River brought the world to Sam Clemens's doorstep. In the days before cars or cross-country railroads, the river was one of the country's major highways. More than anything, Sam and his friends wanted to be steamboat men. The great white ships were almost as majestic as the river itself. When Sam heard the call "Steamboat A comin'," he and nearly everyone else in town hurried to the wharf. Sam couldn't take his eyes off the handsome boats or the rough-talking roustabouts who loaded and unloaded their cargo. Hannibal, Missouri, was a rough place in the 1840s. Missouri had been a state since 1821. Still, it hadn't lost its frontier flavor. When Sam was 9, a shooting took place right outside his house. Another time he came upon the body of a man who'd been murdered. And he saw a slave killed by a white overseer who simply disliked the way the slave had done a job. Slavery was a part of Sam Clemens's youth. Hannibal was like most places in the South. White people found ways to excuse the fact that nearly 3 million blacks were slaves. Steamboat a-comin'. Before steamboats, river travel was often slow and difficult. Boats either had to float downriver, which was unpredictable because of changing currents, or they had to be sailed, towed, or rowed upriver against the current, which gave them quite a workout. Though scientists knew about the awesome power of steam, harnessing that power was dangerous. If too much steam is trapped in a small space, it will explode. In 1807, an inventor named Robert Fulton created America's first practical steamboat. After that, America had a fast and dependable way to move people and goods both down and up the river. By the late 1805, trains took over much of the steamboat's business, but steamboats never left the rivers entirely. Even today, people take sightseeing and vacation cruises on them. Slaves belonged to their owners, just like a horse or a dog. In my schoolboy days, Sam would remember, I was not aware there was anything wrong about slavery. The newspapers said nothing against it, the churches said God approved of it. When Sam's own father had the money, he bought or rented black slaves to help with house and farm work. The slaves Sam knew were also his playmates and friends. Sam spent many weeks each summer at his Uncle John Quarles's farm. There, he and his cousins spent evenings in the slave cabins. Sam especially loved listening to a man called Uncle Daniel, who told folk tales and ghost stories by the fire's flickering light. Sam never forgot the way Uncle Daniel told a story, the words he used, the rhythm of his speech. His voice would one day inspire Sam's own stories. Chapter 2. Life on the Mississippi. Work consists of whatever a body is obliged to do, and play consists of whatever a body is not obliged to do. Mark Twain. In March 1847, Sam's father caught pneumonia and died. Sam was only 11. He felt terrible about his father's death. It wasn't because the two had been close, they hadn't. Sam said he never saw his father laugh. But Sam felt bad that he hadn't been a better son. The family fell on especially hard times. Jane Clemens had to take Sam out of school and put him to work. He became a printer's apprentice at the Missouri Courier newspaper. In those days, every letter of every word had to be set by hand from individual metal block letters. Sam's job included setting stories in type, running and cleaning the printing press, sweeping the floors, and delivering papers. In return, Sam received free room and board. He was not paid any money, nor were apprentices in most trades. Learning a trade was considered payment enough. Sam's room was a straw mattress on the floor of the printing office. His board consisted of meals so skimpy that he stole potatoes and onions from the cellar. Sam also consumed a steady diet of books, everything he could get his hands on. In 1850 he went to work for his older brother, Orion, at the Hannibal Journal. Before long, Sam, now a teenager, began to write. His humorous stories, poetry, and local news were published in the journal. To liven up the paper, he sometimes signed his pieces W. Epaminondas Adrastus Blab, or he caught readers' attention with headlines like, "Terrible Accident. 500 men killed and missing." We had set the above head up expecting, of course, to use it, but as the accident hasn't happened yet, we'll say, to be continued. Sam's lively reporting sold more copies of the journal, but Orion didn't appreciate his brother stretching, twisting, and even inventing news. Journalism was supposed to be fact, not fiction. When Sam was 17, he packed his bags. His restless spirit took him first to St. Louis, then to New York, Philadelphia, Keokuk, Iowa, Chicago, and Cincinnati. Sam worked at various printing jobs in each new place. For a time, he wrote travel letters for the Keokuk Post, signing the humorous pieces Thomas Jefferson Snodgrass. Sam had fun writing. To him, it wasn't work. But the printing jobs were boring. Sam later admitted that he did them lazily, rainingly, complainingly, disgustedly, and always shirking the work when I was not watched. Sam also wanted to make money, lots of money. So when he read about people making fortunes trading the cocoa plant in South America, he decided to go there. It was the first of many get-rich-quick schemes Sam made the mistake of pursuing. He headed south on the Mississippi aboard the steamboat Paul Jones. When he reached New Orleans, however, there were no ships traveling to South America. Sam went back to the Paul Jones. He thought about his childhood dream of being a pilot, and he convinced pilot Horace Bixby to take him on. Sam Clemens was going to become a steamboat man. That could be much of a trick, since it was so wide, Sam later wrote. He soon learned how wrong he was. A pilot had to memorize every detail of the river, hundreds of miles of river, in fact. He had to know the location of shallows, shipwrecks, and I suppose that all a pilot had to do was to keep his boat in the river, and I did not consider reefs, where the boat might run aground. He had to be able to read the surface of the water and to keep track of changing currents, shorelines, and water levels. He had to know the river's shape and landmarks so well that he could navigate in rain, darkness, or thick fog. I haven't got brains enough to be a pilot, Sam complained to Horace Bixby. And if I had, I wouldn't have strength enough to carry them around, unless I went on crutches. Despite what Sam said, he learned quickly. He soaked up everything Bixby told him. He listened for the leadsmen who called out the depth of the water, and he began to read the river like it was a book that always had new stories to tell. One day, Sam would write his own river story, a famous book called Life on the Mississippi. Sam worked on a boat called the Pennsylvania. He also found a job for his younger brother, Henry, on the boat. Safe water? At certain spots in the river, it was a steamboat leadsman's job to drop a weighted line to the bottom of the water. The line was knotted every 6 feet, or fathom, to measure the water's depth. A steamboat had to travel in water that was at least 12 feet deep, which was the second mark on the line. When a pilot heard the leadsman call Mark Twain, Twain was another word for two, he knew the boat was just barely safe or just on the edge of danger. It was also a good description of the way Sam Clemens lived his life, so he chose Mark Twain for his pen name. Then something terrible happened. While Sam was working on another boat, the Pennsylvania's boilers blew up. The accident killed about 150 people. Henry was one of them. He was only 19 years old. For the rest of Sam's life, he blamed himself for Henry's death. But that did not end Sam's steamboat days. Less than a year later, in April 1859, Sam received his pilot's certificate. Soon he was earning $250 a month, as much, Sam liked to say, as the Vice President of the United States. That wasn't true, but Sam's salary was a good one. It was certainly more than his father had ever earned. For the first time in his life, Sam bought expensive clothes and ate fine food. Sam became master of the boat and master of the crowd. At the wheel or relaxing on deck, Sam loved to tell stories to the passengers and crew alike. He also loved the ever-changing sights, voices, and personalities that were part of life on the river. Sam was fascinated by people's accents and habits, and by the river town's varied flavors and rhythms. He later said his time on the river was his schooling.